Hi, I'm Michelle, and in this video we'll introduce a useful time and cost-saving feature for identity stitching in customer journey analytics. Many teams invest a lot of time and money building identity strategies and connections into customer journey analytics, only to discover after the fact that their datasets don't have enough identity coverage for reliable cross-device reporting. Today, validating that usually means running custom queries, waiting on specialists, or even readjusting data when something's not quite right. That's slow, expensive, and delays time to value. Customer Journey Analytics now gives you a dataset preview that includes identity-aware stitching metrics at the moment you configure a connection. As you choose your persistent ID, for example, a web cookie like ECID and a person ID like email from Identity Map, CJA calculates coverage on a recent sample of data. You immediately see person ID coverage, how many events can truly be tied back to a person for cross-device analysis. Persistent ID coverage, how many events at least have a stable device-level identifier. This preview does three things. Reduces time to value. You don't have to wait days or weeks to discover that your person ID is only present on a small fraction of events. Prevents wasted ingestion. You avoid pulling millions of low-value rows into customer journey analytics just to learn they can't be used for people-based reporting. De-risks identity choices. You can safely experiment with different persistent and person IDs and see how they affect coverage before you commit. Let's step into a demo of this feature, which requires I have access to data management features. From the navigation, I'll go to Data Management and then select Connections. Here, I can either pick an existing connection or create a new one. In this example, I'll create a new connection so you can see the full flow with the new identity stitching preview. Normally, I'd fill out all of the standard connection details here. I'll skip most of that setup in this video because what I really want to focus on is how you evaluate a dataset for stitching before you bring it into CJA. Next, I'll click Add Datasets. I'll search for a web dataset that I know has a lot of traffic, something representative of a real-world volume. I'll select this web source, which has many records associated with it, and then click Next to move into the dataset settings. On the dataset settings screen, you'll see an option to enable identity stitching. This is what allows CJA to rekey this dataset from a device-level ID to a person-level ID, so you can do cross-device and cross-channel analysis. When I turn this on, CJA reminds me what stitching does and that I should comply with any relevant privacy and consent requirements. I'll choose Continue. Now we configure how this dataset should be stitched. First, I choose the persistent ID. That's the stable device-level identifier present on as many events as possible. In this web dataset, that's the cookie ID, so I'll select MCID as the persistent ID. Next, I choose the person ID, the higher-order identifier that represents the individual. In this case, I'll select Identity Map as the source. Because I'm using Identity Map, I can now pick which namespace represents the person identifier I care about. Here I'll select Email. That means CJA will try to evaluate events from the cookie level ID up to the email identity whenever it's present. I'll set a 7-day replay window, which allows stitching to look back 7 days when someone authenticates, and choose Web Data as the data source type. With those identity choices in place, I'll click Next to move on to the new Dataset Preview user interface. This is the new Dataset Preview experience. At the top, you'll see the familiar details like the dataset description and the number of records. The important new section is down here, Stitching Metrics. The Person ID coverage metric tells me what percentage of events in my recent sample contained the person ID I selected, in this case, email from Identity Map. You can see that coverage here is below the recommended threshold for cross-device reporting. That means only a relatively small portion of events can truly be tied back to a known person using email. By contrast, persistent ID coverage is high. Almost every event has the cookie ID, which is good news. It means the dataset is very strong at the device level. But for cross-device use cases, like connecting web activity to call center events or linking web and mobile behavior, the email identity would not give me reliable people-based reporting. In practice, this saves a lot of trial and error. Instead of creating a connection, waiting for data to load, building a workspace project, and only then discovering that people-based metrics don't look right, I can see within seconds that my person ID coverage is too low for serious cross-device analysis. At this point, I might choose a different person ID configuration, adjust my identity strategy and experience platform, or decide that this dataset should only be used for device-level reporting. Either way, I'm making an informed decision before I spend time and rows ingesting data into CJA. Thanks for watching.